Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 48. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us on this. We'll call it, not sure when you're listening to this, probably Wednesday morning at some point. Dave and I are recording this Tuesday evening on a very busy trade deadline day for the Pittsburgh Steelers, making a pair of moves, adding a receiver at long last in wide receiver Mike Williams, formerly now of the New York Jets, and the surprise in edge Preston Smith of the Green Bay Packers. So 2 deals to talk about, Dave. Mike Tomlin, got a whole lot going on here for a Tuesday out of the bye.
Yeah, what a crazy day it's been. Busy day. Just to reiterate, we're recording this at 6 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday, and I'm going to try to get it up before midnight because of the it's been a newsy day. Normally if we do these a lot day early, we put them up around midnight, but I'm going to do my best to get this up a couple hours before midnight. And this one will serve as essentially our Wednesday morning show. I unfortunately got to take the dog to the vet first thing on Wednesday morning. So it's kind of good that we're getting this knocked out anyway. But regardless, we just got a lot to talk about on this Tuesday night. Right, Alex?
We do. So just top line recap of the day, the biggest things. Pittsburgh sending a 2025 fifth-round pick to the Jets for wide receiver Mike Williams. That's going to be the lower of the 2 fifth-round picks the Pittsburgh Steelers have. So whatever is the larger number, if it's 160 versus 165, just making up numbers, it'll be pick 165 going to the Jets. Additionally, Pittsburgh sending a 2025 seventh-round pick to the Green Bay Packers for edge rusher Preston Smith. To date, to my knowledge, we don't know which one of those 7th-round picks it'll be, but it's going to be inconsequential regardless of which it is. Pittsburgh has a couple of them. So adding Williams, adding Smith, buyers at the deadline. Dave, what do you like to say? Or I think you quote Jim Rome, react to me about those 2 deals.
Yeah. Oh boy. Where do we start here? Mike Williams.
Start with Williams. Yeah. Start with Williams.
Mike Williams is obviously a guy we've talked about quite a bit over the last several weeks, and really even dating back as far as March. Remember, this is the Mike Williams that the Steelers had lined up for a free agent visit in March after he was cut loose by the Chargers. But before he got to Pittsburgh, he went to visit the Jets in New York, and he never left there. They signed him to a pretty one of those up to deals, and just something that he just would not allow him to get out of town and get on the plane to Pittsburgh for. So if you're scoring at home, this is a guy that the Steelers had interest in dating all the way back to March. Obviously, he landed with the Jets. He's played the first half of the season with the Jets. Didn't put up eye-popping numbers whatsoever. Probably most recognizable as of late for not, as Aaron Rodgers said, not running the red line correctly in that game a couple of weeks ago. Which one was that that they had that loss to?
Oh, that was one of the many primetime games, but that barely narrows down the field. Oh, what game was that? That's a good question.
I'm trying to pull up their schedule real quick. Was that the Bills game? Was it not? Or is it a Vikings game or the Bills game?
No, I think it was the Bills game. You're right, Bills game.
Okay, yeah. And the kind of the conversations that we've had, he's been a weekly almost conversation of a guy that the Steelers might trade for. And then you had the Allen Lazard injury pop up for the Jets, and they placed him on IR, and made you kind of wonder, were they going to still be willing to part with Mike Williams come the trade deadline? Now, after the trade obviously was made this afternoon, I think there was a report or two saying this is a guy that the Steelers have been after now for several weeks. That obviously adds up at this point. It's easier to report that stuff after the fact too, but it is what it is there. you've got a guy, contested ball catcher, got some size to him, obviously coming off of the knee injury that he had with the Chargers in 2023. Had the rehab process that went along with that. You're hoping to get a Mike Williams version closer to the one that he was, before suffering that injury as a member with the Chargers. A guy that I think can still open it up and get down the field vertically. A guy that can run under those moon balls of Russell Wilson. A guy that's he doesn't have many catches this year, but I think there's one or two nice contested catches on the tape this year. Probably was very unhappy in New York on top of it. Remember, he was on the side there for a couple of practices after the Jets had traded for Devontae Adams. I bet he's happy for a change of scenery at this point. Supposedly a good locker room guy, to hear Aaron Rodgers talk on Pat McAfee's show earlier on Tuesday. And I just envision this as like a fifth round dart throw at a guy that you hope can elevate your wide receiver room and maybe even have the upside of the type of player that he was during the second half of this season, that he was towards the end of his time there before suffering that knee injury with the Chargers. So George Pickens ought to be glad to see him. Arthur Smith ought to be glad to see him. Russell Wilson ought to be glad to see him. And now it's just a matter of what kind of production can you get out of this guy, and what kind of pressure can he take off George Pickens when he is on the field moving forward into the second half of the season. Now, before I turn it over to you real quick, there is a little bit of uncertainty about this contract here. The way Over the Cap had it laid out prior to them making changes after this deal was done, it certainly, the way they're wording and laying out of this deal, made it seem like the Steelers were only going to incur $627,500 base salary, along with production incentives that it would be an absolutely fantastic if he hits any of them related to catches and I think yardage or something along those lines.
Touchdowns or
touchdowns. They're considered not likely to be earned, assuming those things transferred there. Now, since Over the Cap has changed his listing, they don't list him on the long list of players under the Steelers, but I think someone in there not named Jason at Over the Cap went in there and just made a quick change, and it feels like it's wrong. They have him listed as his $2.5 million cap hit, which is exactly half of what his kind of listed per se base salary of $5 million was on the site. But the way Over the Cap had that laid out, it made it seem like they had turned, because he had 4 additional void years added on, to that deal to lower his cap charge with the Jets, allegedly. And the way things were laid out, the way I understood them, were that even the per game roster bonuses, along with a chunk of all but like $1.255 million of the base salary, was turned into a signing bonus, and that's why those void years were added to help kind of keep his salary cap charge for 2024 real low. Now, once again, that was before Over the Cap made a change this afternoon since the trade was made. I don't know if somebody went in there and was just looking at the raw numbers and made the change, but they have them listed at $2.5 million cap charge right now. And that does not add up along with the dead money they have listed for the Jets right now as part of this trade. All those numbers do not add up. So we'll have to wait until this comes out in the wash in the next couple of days in the NFLPA. But my understanding was that it was going to be a little less than $700,000 cap charge for the Steelers. And I apologize if that's wrong, but I was going off of the Over the Cap numbers that they had listed pre-trade. So, it's somewhere within there in the wash, or probably a little less than 700,000 to 2.5 million, which is a considerable difference there. But That's where I think we're at as of the recording of this. I did put in the post that I wrote earlier today in big red letters, kind of edited to add what I just told you right there. So there's that part of it that needs to be taken into consideration. The deal obviously looks a lot better if you're giving up a fifth and you're only taking on a little more than $600,000 in salary. Looks a lot different than it does taking on 2.5 million of it. Now, at its core, we knew the Steelers needed to try to do their best to upgrade this wide receiver room. We knew Mike Williams was on the list of names that probably were going to look at. I think after the fact, Jeremy Fowler reported that they made a play for Darius Slayton with the Giants. I imagine that was a little bit more expensive as far as compensation goes. I think Slayton ended up staying put with the Giants. I mean, that's my thoughts on it. You got a guy that you hope has upside that can produce better than he produced with the Jets in the first half of the season. A guy that can stretch the field, make some contested catches, and take a little bit of pressure off of George Pickens. And big enough body should be a willing blocker in the run game.
Just to put a bow on it, even if it is the $2.5 million that Pittsburgh is assuming, they can still manage that. That's not going to dramatically change how they can handle things cap-wise, correct?
Right. In fact, I think NFLPA, as of this morning, after some of the washes some of the stuff had materialized through the bye week with size of the practice squad and size of the 53 man roster, the NFLPA had the Steelers at where is it here? 8.121, almost $8.122 million in available salary cap space. And remember that whatever Mike Williams cap number is, let's say for some reason it's the 2.5 million, you're going to have the offset of the player going off the roster and what was left of that salary on top of it there. So no, I mean, you're not talking about a huge, even if his cap number winds up being 2.5 million, which I don't think it will be, but I have been wrong before. You're talking about the net impact as far as salary cap space goes is pretty marginal,
Gotcha. Yeah, difference in the salary for sure. We'll get hopefully confirmation on that within a couple of days or so. But either way, it's not going to impact the viability of the deal or other moves or the overall standing of where Pittsburgh's at salary cap wise. For me, I kind of echo my thoughts Monday. I said I was fine with this team adding a receiver. I'm fine with adding Mike Williams. I'm not going to pretend like I love it. I'm not going to pretend like this is a game changer that changes how the Steelers are viewed. Whatever you thought about Pittsburgh before the trade, you probably generally still feel about the team after the trade. If I had to make a ranking of the receivers that were supposedly on the market that I would have gone after, Williams would have been lower on that list, above an Adam Thielen, but below the likes of Darius Slayton and probably even Jacoby Myers, to be honest with you. But right. What I think he is, it's a good scheme fit because all Williams has to do for this trade to feel like a success is make a couple of those splash plays downfield. He's a big receiver. He's a contested catch receiver. He's a guy that can make those receptions and tough grabs downfield, outside the numbers, off of play action. And that's how Pittsburgh builds their passing game. It's play action, it's vertical, outside the numbers, all the moon balls that can be thrown to George Pickens. Williams can hopefully do similar. He's not going to be the contested catch machine that Pickens is, but if he can just make a couple of those big chunk plays, those are going to be game changers in those contests in which they occur. So I'm not expecting a ton of volume from Williams. I'm not expecting this to be a total changer for the offense, but when you had Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin, guys that really didn't have skill sets to do that, again, downfield vertically, I think that really complements George Pickens pretty well.
Let's see. In the 9 games with the Jets, he had 12 for 166 and no touchdowns. You would think that he could, you hope at least more than equal that. In fact, probably kind of double it. Let's see, 24 catches over the final. How many games? 9 games.
9 games.
I mean, let's say it's 3 catches a game times 9. 27 catches, believable.
Yeah, I think 2 to 3 per game, but I just hope, because for him, it's going to be less about the quantity as a non-number 1 or number 2 and probably a number 3 type option in a run-heavy offense that's 31st in passing attempts and 2nd in rushing attempts. It's about the quality of those catches and making some of those plays downfield. So if he can do that, you're going to feel some real value out of that. If not, this trade may feel a little hollow, a little empty, but I like the fit because even guys like Slayton, who I liked a lot, and I really wanted this team to go after DeAndre Hopkins, they were cut from a similar cloth. I think they could make some of those plays downfield. Now Slayton is faster. Hopkins probably better hands catcher, better against zone coverage. But point is, I think there were guys that could make some of those grabs downfield, and I think Williams is capable of doing that. And to be fair to him, as you said, coming off the torn ACL, that's tough to do. And so maybe, the further you get away from the injury and your rehab recovery, the more confidence you get in that knee, the mental block, hopefully you get past. That may allow Williams to play more freely. Rodgers seemed to allude to that, saying that he kind of felt like his old Mike Williams self the last couple of weeks before getting traded. It wasn't translating to production, but just from the way he was running routes and moving out there. So hopefully he can be even better the further you get away from that 2023 knee injury.
You want saying, look, he even before leaving the Jets, and he's limited amount of receptions this year, 13.8 yards per reception number. I think his average depth of target has been pretty high this season in general. Even the few games that he played with the Chargers before knee injury last year, 13.1. I mean, if you throw out the what he's done this year and what he did in the 3 games with the Chargers, you're talking a guy that's consistently has an average of over 15 yards per reception. You're hoping to get a guy that if they want to give that much attention to George Pickens when it comes to keeping the top on things, you hope to have a guy in Mike Williams that'll make him pay for it. Going vertical there more so than you've obviously been able to do. And look, you've still got a guy in Calvin Austin that can get vertical, but at least you got a bigger guy now for 50-50 balls down the field, right, on top of it there. So it gives you a guy that can stretch the field vertically and a guy that you would think, assuming he can stack a few times here and get some one-on-one, is to come down with a couple of those moon balls. So if you parse this thing out to something around, let's give him 25 catches per se, Alex, over the next 9 games, and if you times that by even just 13 yards per average reception, you're talking about 325 yards of offense, and it feels like both those numbers should be attainable for him. At least you hope they would, based on the way it seems this team approached this trade.
How do you feel about giving up the 5th round pick? Too much? Just right? What do you think?
I mean, obviously, you'd probably would have liked to have seen that been a little less, but it's understandable, especially if, look, I mean, if they only if they're only eating, a little over 600,000 with it, that makes it more understandable why you would give up a little bit higher pick. But I mean, it's a 5th round pick. They had, not that you should just go throwing those away, but they had 2 of them, right?
Right.
So if that's what it took to get the deal done, it's a guy that you like, and it appears that it is, 4th would have been too much.
Sure.
But I can live with the 5th. I mean, especially if at the end of this thing, you're looking at least 25 more receptions for an average of 13 yards per reception or more, and mix in, 3-4 touchdowns in there.
Yeah, I think the phrase "I can live with it" sums up my thoughts. I had thought, once the Jets had acquired Devontae Adams, that Williams would get shipped out for pennies on the dollar. But I think Lazard getting hurt and just the natural deadline of 4 p.m. increases the price a little bit. You got to make a decision. And Pittsburgh did not have a 6th round pick. That's being held by Chicago right now as the conditional 6th round pick as part of the Fields deal. So I imagine a 7th alone was not intriguing the Jets enough to move him, and so you had to do a 5th, and guess you couldn't get back any picks from the Jets to get back a 7th of theirs or whatever the case is. So it's nitpicking. I think the only time to talk about compensation and really focusing on that is for like great deals, robberies, or overpays that are clear and terrible. In this one, it's more negligible. It is more than what I thought it would ultimately be, but given the position Pittsburgh was in, I understand it, and I'm not going to really criticize the 5th-round pick for Williams.
Look, the worth of the pick value will be in what he does on the field and how he helps
Sure.
his offense, and even just his mere presence. Does that end up opening up a couple other guys like Austin and Pat Freiermuth and obviously Pickens? Can you make people pay with his presence? And look, even the run game aspect, I haven't gone deep into that, but I mean, he's a bigger bodied guy, right?
Yeah, I don't know how good of a blocker he is, and you have guys that can do that like Jefferson already that may still assume those roles to some maybe lesser degree, but he's got some size, and so that's a good start. But I couldn't tell you right now how capable or really how willing of a blocker he is.
And if he gets anything more than 25 receptions and anything more than say 350 to 400 yards and a couple touchdowns mixed in there, then yeah, hell yeah, it's worth it. Because that production should translate to the ball moving down the field and this team putting up points. So it's livable, at least in the moment. When it comes to 5th-round pick, but obviously you're going to be judged on results here when you look back at this thing at the end of the regular season.
Just make some of those big plays downfield. Make, I don't know, 4 or 5 of those over the next 9 games, and I'll be pretty happy with the way this trade has turned out. And it does protect against injury. Somebody else goes down. There's some more depth there, and he's not going to replace George Pickens, but if you did lose Pickens, at least you have the same framework of your offense in terms of throwing some 50-50 balls to a guy like Williams. So structurally, it wouldn't change dramatically, even if the effectiveness might change a little bit.
And not defending the pick or whatnot, but this is obviously a guy that the Steelers had pegged dating all the way back to March. And they've obviously watched him for the first half of the season here, and they still felt that that good about him to this point. So, if you as I've said in the past, if you show conviction and you go and you act on that conviction, which obviously they've had in this guy dating back to March, I mean, how can you fault them for finishing something that they wanted to start back in March?
Yeah, and to Pittsburgh's kind of credit, like the Jets kind of had the pickle jar that was sealed shut, and they kind of twisted it 3/4 of the way, and Pittsburgh will do the last quarter, whereas the Steelers don't have to pay Williams what the Jets paid Williams, and they didn't have to assume the risk of, okay, whereas he had health-wise, we're not 100% sure. He's got to go through training camp on the side, not really contribute right away. They're getting him for cheaper and, ready to go from a health standpoint. So they kind of allowed the Jets to do all the dirty work in terms of paying the guy and getting him rehabbed and getting him ready to go for the regular season. And hopefully they can reap the benefits on the other side of a pretty cheap contract, no matter what that number ends up being, $700K, $2.5 million, and a guy that probably is probably feeling a lot better, healthier, more confident than he was probably back in August.
Yeah, and he probably couldn't wait to get out of New York,
Yeah.
So going to be interesting to hear him talk to the media once he arrives in Pittsburgh here, and be interesting. I mean, he's not going to probably be a 60 snap game guy, right? Probably what, 35?
Yeah, it'll ebb and flow a bit, especially out of the gate. I'm sure there'll be an acclimation period, may not play a ton, though I think he will play against the Commanders on Sunday. I would say in that 30 to 45 range, depending.
All right.
All right, Preston Smith. This was when the Williams deal occurred. I barely even raised an eyebrow to it. I mean, it was important. It was confirmation. Finally, you get a receiver after the endless discussion about a receiver that never materialized. But you kind of knew that Williams was one of the top names that could be acquired, and not a surprise in a lot of ways. For me, I don't know about you, Dave, the Preston Smith one, I went, whoa, I did not expect that one coming. I knew Smith was on the block. I knew teams were interested. I didn't think Pittsburgh was going to be the mix for that one. But I kind of like this deal, especially for the cost. 7th-round pick, it's essentially nothing. And to get some really good depth, there is that big edge that Preston Smith is. He's not going to maybe make the impact that Williams will, may not have the snap count that Williams will, but I think it's really shrewd depth at an important position.
Yeah, and leading up the last couple of days, I think it was even Jerry Dulac said, maybe this team adds an edge rusher too. And we went through thinking, all right, where else could this team add? Maybe a backup corner, maybe a defensive lineman that can play in the middle. And okay, even though I didn't firmly believe that would be the case, maybe even in edge rusher there. This one, I had to look at it 8 or 9 times to make sure it wasn't a fake tweet or anything like that. Even if you had told me they were going to add an edge, I don't think Preston Smith would have been on my short list looking around. I wasn't even totally convinced that the Packers were going to part ways with him, but they obviously did. Look, you can. It's funny how after the fact you can circle these things all the way back and connect a few dots here and there. Back in 2015, was a pre-draft visitor for the Steelers ahead of that year's draft. You had even done a pretty sizable scouting report on him. He obviously got drafted elsewhere, I think, played for the Browns. And wasn't there even some rumblings back when he was a free agent? Was he a free agent or did he get traded from the Browns to the Packers? How did that all work out? Seemed like during a free agency period,
he was a free agent. He signed as a free agent in 2019.
Yeah, people were throwing his name out there as maybe a guy because of maybe past association in pre-draft. Maybe we kibitzed about once or twice during the head of free agency. I don't remember exactly there, but this one came out of the blue. Kind of to me, and it was surprising. Now, I guess you have to ask yourself, why would a team like the Packers, who are still, technically in the thick of things, move on from a guy like that? For starters, he's got a couple years remaining on his contract. He's going to be very lucky to see him. I think next year's listed at $12 million base salary at his age, well over, on the other side of 30 at this point. This was probably going to be his swan song. It sounds like the Packers are wanting to go a little bit younger. He's only played like 300 and something snaps, I think, through the first 9 games. I think a few other reports said his snaps have kind of dwindled the last couple of weeks there with him. So what are the Steelers getting here? At least in the brief amount of tape that I looked at, you're talking about one of those kind of unique body types, especially when it comes to edge guys that the Steelers will look at on the high end as far as the weight goes. He's a little bit heftier, 265, probably to 270. I'd be interested. I hope somebody asks him how much he weighs, because he looks pretty. I mean, he looks pretty, put together still at this point. And obviously he's got the length to him and all still. I think he's got a couple, 2.5 sacks so far this season, several pressures, couple quarterback hits and all. First thing that ran through my mind, I think it ran through your mind as well too, with DeMarvin Leal on IR. And even though I don't think Preston's done a lot of this playing inside the tackle so far, but you've got a guy that, well, look, here's what he's been doing. He's been playing on both sides on the edge. So you got a guy that can play both on the left and right side and stand up and rush or put his hand down and rush. They also dropped him in coverage a couple of times as well. You do wonder, though, if this is kind of a more experienced, more decorated, kind of versatile DeMarvin Leal, if you will, in some sub-package situations. Can you kind of line him up inside and turn him loose? I think he still plays the run, at least in what I looked in setting the edge really well. There's one clip of him taking on the puller in the game against the Vikings and blowing up that run. A couple other clips against the Eagles, managing to corral Jalen Hurts on some keepers that he had. Still has incredible strength. He's a great crasher still on twists and stunts. Guy that hits his mark and usually takes 2 guys with him to open up a lane. And a guy that, can still get after the passer and win. Got a nice little hump, arm over, and can still use a little bit of speed to power. So I think you've got yourself a guy that can at worst be your fourth outside linebacker, probably take a couple snaps away from Herbig and maybe some rundown situations, maybe some pass rushing snaps away from each of Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt on some long drives, which you hope you don't have a lot of, and kind of go from there. And I think the money on him, barring any other reports coming out on him, I think it's what did I write on there? 2 point something million. I think is 2.023 529. So a hair over 2 million if the numbers I was looking at is correct on what they'll assume on him.
Now, this is a 1 year thing, right? He's under contract past this year, but this is going to be like a William Jackson, 1 year, you're going to cut him here in March type of thing, correct?
Yeah, I don't think he has a roster bonus due or anything like that, but he would either have to, you'd have to have a prayer meeting with him and say, do you want to play another year? If so, you're not going to play at that number.
Right. And that's 12 million next year, you said?
Yeah, I think the base is 12 million on that.
Yeah.
And,
so it's a 1 year.
Obviously no guaranteed money for either of these guys past this year.
Right. So you can cleanly cut, no punishment, no downside to cutting him in March if that ends up being the outcome for Preston Smith. But yeah, I just think, Dave, this is good depth to have, and you cannot have enough depth at outside linebacker. I think Omar Khan has done a really good job since getting hired of insulating and protecting Pittsburgh with quality edge depth. And so you don't have to deal with your backups are Malik Reed and Jameer Jones. Hope your starters stay healthy kind of deal. And Pittsburgh's getting healthier now with Highsmith returning and Herbig working his way back, but they felt the effects of losing those guys earlier this year for extended periods of time where you're forced to rely on Jeremiah Moon coming straight off of IR and some of the other guys, Ogundeji, calling guys up from practice squads, and you really feel the blow there. So I think Pittsburgh's smart to add strength to strength and have as quality depth as possible. Listen, a TJ Watt sprains his MCL in the regular season finale last year, and all of a sudden you expect to have him for the playoffs, and he can't play in the wildcard game. Now, Smith's not going to replace TJ Watt, but the point is you want to have really quality depth. They draft Nick Herbig, they claim Moon off of waivers, they trade for Preston Smith for pennies on the dollar, and so I think it's really smart to do that. And yeah, I had a Liao type of feel too, where he's definitely an outside linebacker, but could you get a little creative with him? Could you put him with his hand down in that Bronco, that 3 outside linebacker package Pittsburgh was toying with early in the year before some of those guys got hurt? Yeah, I think you potentially could. So there's some versatility I think that can be had with Preston Smith. He's still been productive, 8 sacks last year, 2.5 sacks this year, despite limited, as you said, declining playing time. So he still can play. So the impact may not be felt much in terms of his snap count game to game, but you sleep better at night knowing you have a guy like Preston Smith. So if somebody gets hurt, that guy steps in and you're good to go.
Yeah, this is a Decker. I mean, this is a guy that's done it, been there and done that in this league, so obviously has experience. And as I said, I'm looking at something right now. Has he missed a game even? People are going to get mad at me for saying this, but we
got a squirrel moment. In 2021, did he miss a game? Was that the 17 game season? He missed one in 2021, but it looks like that's his only game he's ever missed.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at they don't have they used to keep the Iron Man sheet updated on the media side here. They don't have it updated right now. I was going to look and see what his streak is for consecutive game. I mean, I'm looking at you're saying 2020, how many games were in the 20? Was that the first 17 game? Was 2021
yes,
the first?
It was. He was inactive for week 7 against the Washington, whatever they were called in 2021.
Okay. All right. So that looks like it's it though, right?
Looks like the only game he's appeared to have missed. So very durable type of guy. He's played in 155 of 156 possible games. So that is an impressive streak. So I'd expect him to be available and durable. He's been consistent throughout his career. He's got size, he's got length, he can play the run, can be a power rusher, checks all the boxes in a prototypical Steelers edge rusher. And so it's a good fit for not much cost to give yourself really quality depth top to bottom.
I mean, for a 7th round draft pick for a guy as decorated as this, who has the durability that he's had, who's still in the little bit of tape that I looked at, still can get it done specifically against the run. What else do you want for $2 million?
Right.
and a 7th-round pick. So this was a pleasant surprise. I did not see this coming with him. And like I said, if you would have even told me, I guarantee you they're going to add an edge. I'm not sure I would have thought to have add him to a short list of 3 or 4 guys.
Yeah, I would not have guessed it. I knew he was available. I heard Cincinnati potentially in connection. So did not think it'd be Pittsburgh for an AFC North team, but happy to see it. And I think it's again a smart, shrewd type of move. Then you may not appreciate it immediately in the first couple games, but somebody gets hurt, he's now your number 3. You're going to really appreciate it then.
Yeah, and look, I like the fact that this guy's played on both sides of the line for a long time as well. And you watch him play against the run, and you watch him kind of be disciplined in kind of the zone reads, which you got a couple of those games coming up, right? Against Daniels and Lamar and whoever else down the road there. Hurts. Yeah. So makes a lot of sense. And then once again, you tie this all back up into a little bow that this is a guy that the Steelers had interest in ahead of the 2015 draft. So it's funny how after the fact you can easily connect some of these dots.
Just dust off that old scouting report and get a refresher. That's what I did. When I read my report that I wrote on him in 2015. So it's funny to see all those things come full circle, but he's obviously had a really strong NFL career since then. So that's the main reason why he was added for what he's done since entering the NFL. All right, Dave. Pittsburgh having to make some roster moves, just corresponding moves to add their 2 new Steelers onto the team. And the team announced those moves earlier today. Really, one guy had to go, and that is tight end Rodney Williams, who was waived, number 5 tight end, quality special teamer, but he's the number 5 tight end, not playing much on offense. If Herbig comes back, that's going to reduce Williams' role on special teams. Not really needed at that point. Pruitt, the better blocker, seeing substantially more offensive playing time. I would imagine Williams will go to the practice squad, assuming he clears waivers. Pittsburgh also releasing 2 players from the practice squad, and former 2nd-round pick Andy Isabella, the speedster, got signed about 2 weeks ago, did not appear in a game, and also rookie linebacker Craig Young, who signed in mid-October, has yet to appear in an NFL game. So to put an extra bow on all of the bows, those are the domino effect moves made from these trades.
All right. We're square.
I think they have, assuming that Williams gets to the practice squad, I believe they'll have 1 spot open after that to still add. But right now, I think they're going to be at 2 with the initial releases, waivings of Isabella and Young. All right, Dave, before the trade craziness happened, Mike Tomlin, very cool, calm, collected during his Tuesday press conference. Not a ton to note here coming out of the bye, and certainly the trade deadline dominating the discussion, but Pittsburgh getting an encouraging health update where Tomlin says that multiple players who have been injured and missed a couple of games have a chance to play against the Commanders on Sunday. That includes center Zach Frazier, outside linebacker Nick Herbig, linebacker Tyler Medikevich, and even cornerback Corey Trice Jr., who's apparently got a chance to play. I assume that's going to mean his practice window to return will be opened on Wednesday, and we'll take it from there. He's been out since week 3 with a hamstring injury. So good news across the board. Of course, Cam Sutton will be available to them. And Tomlin said Justin Fields had that minor hamstring injury in week number 8. He should be good to go for this Commanders game.
Yeah, I think of all the guys that I'm most interested to see on what happens with him on the Wednesday injury report would be Nick Herbig, because there was some video, I think 93.7 posted from the Monday bonus day. It didn't appear like he was doing all that. He was out there on the field, but we'll have to see what level of participation he has the rest of the week. And then is this the week that Cordell Patterson gets back? Be watching those 2 specifically. As you stated, it sounds like the Corey Trice Jr. 21-day window will be open. We'll know by Saturday whether or not he gets, if he can get up and running enough to get activated to the 53 or not. If he does, you would think probably CJ Henderson might be the guy for that. And you still got Tyler Matakevich hanging around out there on his 21-day window. So we've got a lot of to be determined, I think, with a few of these guys, whether or not they're going to end up being on the 53-man roster and dressing on Sunday against the Washington Commanders. But I am kind of curious about what's going to happen of all the names here with Nick Herbig coming off of that hamstring injury.
Yeah, I hope so. We'll see. If not, then Preston Smith could have a role. Of course, Jeremiah Moon is still there and will be the number 3. You would expect Moon to still keep his spot, even with all these potential roster moves happening end of the week to get some guys on the roster. Or do you think there's a chance he could get?
I'd have to do all the math and all on this.
Because he is a valuable special teamer. Smith, I assume, will not be playing there. Herbig plays some, but bit more limited in snap count. I think Moon will stick.
And what are your inactives? Edmonds go back to the inactive list, him or Casey, or because you got Cam Sutton, you got to fit into this picture now. So we should be a lot more clearer on this, especially when it comes to Moon specifically by maybe by Friday.
And Sutton, by the way, is officially on Pittsburgh's 53-man roster. The roster exemption for him expired Monday at 4 p.m., so he's officially been added, but they had an open spot for him. So there was no corresponding move that had to be made there, but we'll have to see how more moves, and they'll probably be it'll be a busy Saturday day with this team probably shuffling the roster a little bit more.
Yeah, and then as you stated, Frazier's, don't want to overlook the importance of Frazier potentially coming back this week. Sounds like he will, and you mentioned Justin Fields should be over that hamstring injury as well. So as Mike Tomlin said early in the press conference, in so many words, like we say, never had a bye week I didn't like. They never come at the wrong time per se, and this one obviously right in the middle of the season, and hopefully a lot of these guys make it back to the field come Sunday against the Commanders.
Staying with Tomlin's press conference, he was asked about Cam Sutton's role, and there's no concrete detail about what that role will look like, but he did make the point to say that this is not necessarily a him versus Beanie Bishop type of thing. He said the whole secondary is, quote, on notice because of the versatility that Cam Sutton has. And that's kind of what I've been saying for a little bit. I mean, there could be a chance that, Sutton will take away snaps short-term, long-term this season from Bishop, but this is not always either or. There's a way to play both guys. I think Sutton can replace and should replace Edmonds in dime packages as that 6th defensive back on the field, unless Trice ends up getting the hat and ends up getting the role, but that may be a little too early for him. So I think there's a way to get both guys on the field, and it's just good to have options and flexibility, and Sutton being able to wear any hat in the secondary is a big bonus to get midseason.
Looks like the Steelers have signed a Dominique Davis to the practice squad.
Okay, so that'll be one of their 2 open practice squad spots. Don't think I know too much about the name. I don't. What position?
I don't know anything about Dominique Davis. That doesn't ring a bell. Let me see real quick here. He is a defensive tackle.
Okay.
Out of UNC Pembroke.
Wonder if that's a little nose tackle depth potentially. I know they signed Fahoko, but
6'2", 326, undrafted by the Jets in 2020. Spent time with the Houston Gamblers in the USFL. Most recently, I think Cincinnati Bengals. Was waived by the Bengals on August 27th, 2024, and re-signed to the practice squad. The Bengals released him from the practice squad on October 22nd.
Okay, so a little extra depth there on that defensive line. So, I know Cam Hayward's been getting some days off. Ogunjobi gets some rest days. You got some of the injuries to Adams going on there, so probably some depth to help this team throughout practice.
All right, we got a little breaking news in.
Why not? Add some more to today's roster additions and shuffling. All right, Dave, what else from Mike Tomlin, if anything? Again, pretty light presser overall, given the bye week nature of it all and focusing on the trade deadline. Anything else stick out to you?
I want to just continue on the conversation you just had about Cameron Sutton. And,
sure.
Man, we've talked about at times how static the coverages, have looked at times. And Mike Tomlin went out of his way to even call Cameron Sutton a utility back. Maybe I'll list him as UB on the snap count recap or whatnot. But I mean, that's not new, and as you know, we've seen him do some even dating back into the preseason, right? This year, rotating back into some safety, positions and all. Like you know, if you have him out on the field as part of, let's say, a dime or something, you can have a little bit of fun with that with some rotations.
Sure, they did in his last stint with Pittsburgh in 2022, doing some different stuff with him. So yeah, there's a ton of versatility there. Play slot corner, outside corner, also some depth on the outside. Somebody gets hurt, Jackson or Porter. You know, is it going to be him or Pierre? I kind of trust Sutton a bit more than I trust Pierre out there playing outside corner. I like Pierre for special teams, but less so in a defensive role that's going to be counted upon. So there's that. There's the deep half rotations that helps unlock Minka, allow him to rotate and spin. So Sutton can play deep half, play deep middle, has a better feel and timing for how to disguise those things, probably better than what an Edmonds is able to do, just has better ball skills, a better coverage guy than a Terrell Edmonds. Slot depth if something happens to Beanie Bishop. So helps you out in a whole bunch of ways, gives you more flexibility. Whenever a defense has some options and flexibility in game for a game plan that particular week, that's a real good thing to have in your back pocket.
Man, maybe his presence can help unlock Minka to make a few more, make some plays here moving forward.
It can't hurt just being able to disguise and time things up pretty well. So I don't know if it will, but it certainly will not hinder that ability.
Yeah, I'm interested to see, how he is utilized, what packages, how often, what these kind of rotations look like with him. But you obviously got a smart guy. Keep rolling back to Kevin Colbert and them talking about him coming out of the draft, how they visited him at Tennessee and how he knew, the roles of every defensive player, as part of that defense. That's always stuck with me throughout the years when you talk about a guy like Cameron Sutton. So interested to see him implemented back in this defense starting on Sunday.
Anything else from Tomlin? Any other big bullet points from his presser? If not, I got one more thing to talk about, but go ahead.
I think the part about the answer about his thoughts on the team, if it's what he thought it would be at this point, and him saying, well, yes and no, and essentially saying, look, normally you have they've obviously had some injuries. We're missing games with Alex Highsmith and Herbig and along those lines. So it's really hard to. What was the exact question and answer? Do you have that in front of you here?
I don't, unfortunately.
I thought the way he crafted that was pretty. How he answered that question. The identity on if 8 games is enough to determine the team's identity. He says, I think that's a slippery discussion because oftentimes your immediate identity is affected by current circumstance. When there's a lack of player availability in certain areas, oftentimes it affects how you go about business. For example, for a large part of that 8 games that you mentioned, we only had TJ and we didn't have Alex Highsmith or Nick Herbig. And so that might affect how you rush, particularly in one-dimensional moments. And so broadly, yes, but there's some complexities if I'm legitimately answering that question, because oftentimes your day-to-day decisions in short term are affected by current circumstances. So the larger body of time that you look at, the more that statement is true. And oftentimes 8 games can be or cannot be enough of a sample size to legitimately address that. I got a kick out of that answer.
Yeah, it's a classic Tomlin answer, but it's fair. There's small sample sizes. Injuries can dictate a lot. Your offensive line was shuffling so much. They had, 6 different O-line combinations the first 7 games, whatever the stat was. You don't have Russell Wilson. So these things can change. And, of course, injuries can still impact you the rest of the way. So, it's hard to maybe talk about identity in smaller windows, but I think Pittsburgh knows who they are, who they want to be. I think they'll be able to match personnel to that vision better this year than any year before, and that's why this offense is having substantially more success.
All right, I imagine you want to talk about what he said about the run defense, or no?
No, I was going to talk about something trade-related. Speaking of trades, the Steelers' opponent this Sunday, busy at the deadline as well. They traded for Saints cornerback Marshawn Lattimore. Now, he's got a hamstring injury. I don't know for sure he's going to play, but if so, that's going to be a big-time acquisition for them to get Lattimore from the Saints.
Yeah, because of that hamstring injury, be interested in being a new acquisition. he's for certain he's going to be a guy to look up immediately on Wednesday when that first injury report comes out. And then when Dan Quinn next talks to the media, what he has to say about his chances, he's probably not going to give away the whole farm in his answer. He'll probably say, we'll see how it goes. And he's an experienced coach and all as well. But quite a move that the Commanders made in adding him to the fold. And the biggest thing, as you said, is how healthy is he right now? And if he's not 100% but does play, how much will he play and how effective will he be?
Right. And sticking with Washington, Tomlin talked about Jaden Daniels, and someone said, for a rookie, how is he doing? And Tomlin said, I don't really view him as rookie versus veteran. I just view the tape as the tape, and he's certainly playing well beyond his years right now. And talked about the mobility and the creativity. So Pittsburgh has had some issues with mobile quarterbacks this year, and defending the run game in particular out of those structures. So that'll be a big thing to watch for. I don't know how far you've gotten into kind of watching Washington. We'll save a lot of this for Friday's show, but it's a really fun offense. What Cliff Kingsbury's doing there is really
a lot of
inventive,
misdirection, a lot of eye candy.
Yeah, there's a ton going on there. And so I think this offense has been able to stick more than it did out there in Arizona. And of course, when you have a quarterback like Daniels, it certainly helps a ton. But Pittsburgh will have their hands full, safe to say.
Yeah, this is going to be a good litmus test for this defense, especially coming off of what they gave up against the Giants on the ground, even though Mike Tomlin seemed to almost want to try to brush that under the rug a little bit, didn't he?
Yeah, and I kind of understood the point. It's one game, and it was not acceptable, but I don't want to say that I'm setting my hair on fire about worrying over the run defense. I do have a video coming out for Wednesday talking about quarterback mobility and how that's holding some of the backside defenders, and that could be an issue against Daniels and Lamar and Jalen Hurts later this year. But yeah, I think overall it was a little more blip in terms of them getting beat up at the line of scrimmage than it going to be a big problem that occurs and reoccurs throughout the rest of the season.
And as we talked in kind of the All-22 wrap up, it felt, and I'm not excusing it, and Mike Tomlin isn't either, but it felt in game worse than what it actually seemed on tape. Now, once again, you can't take away those big runs, and you're going to have explosive runs of 10 yards or more against you, maybe one or two times a game, but it's the ones that go for the 20 and the 40 for a touchdown and the 17 with like 12 of that coming after first contact. Those are the ones that get you that get you bugged out a little bit there. So he went on to say that some of it's really good execution by them, meaning the Giants, to be quite honest with you. I think it was reflective in their ability. What did you make about the comment about the but certainly we can get better in some areas in terms of fundamental things, whipping blocks, making tackles, us as coaches putting them in a very best position to do those things. I think particularly on that big breakout run, that's a call that we as a coaching staff wish we could have back, for example.
I assume that's referring to the Tracy 45-yard touchdown. He didn't specify, but I assume, he said he didn't like the call. I don't know exactly what part he didn't like. I'll have to kind of go back and look. I felt like there were some guys there. Elliott was down low and just kind of was late to find the ball to key it, and Queen couldn't get off the block. So I'll have to go back and check. Obviously, he's being honest, didn't like the call, put it more on the call than he put it on probably the players there. But I felt like Pittsburgh had a chance to make a play there.
And it's not oftentimes you hear Mike Tomlin say he didn't like the call.
Yeah, I don't know the last time he's actually talked about a play call that he didn't like. So I don't know if I don't know. I don't think it's throwing Austin under the bus. It might have been even his own play call because he's pretty involved there in the defensive play calling. So pretty honest though from Tomlin, no doubt.
Yeah, I'm going to go back and look at that. Only 20 minutes from Tomlin today. That's a short presser, especially coming out of a bye. I suppose that's why coming out of bye, no game to talk, no pass game really to talk about there. All right. Anything else from Mike Tomlin?
Yeah, if that presser was held a couple hours later, that'd been a 40-minute press conference, but all the fireworks getting happening after the fact. So yeah, that was really it for Tomlin. That's all I really have today.
Yeah, he talked about Joey Porter Jr. and why sometimes he shouted. He didn't give an answer, just basically said sometimes he'll travel. He did talk about backside receivers sometimes isolating in formation and all, but he worked his way around that answer.
Yeah, Porter's movement is game plan dependent based on what offenses do and situational. There's no hard and fast rule for when and how Porter moves around.
All right. What else we have on this?
That's all I got. We can get to some reader emails and close out today's show. Got a great film room, I think, up. We do have, I know one already has been posted on Mike Williams. One should be going up on Preston Smith here. Tuesday night should be up by the time people are listening to this, so be sure to check those out.
Let's look at one from Seth Garlow here. Woohoo! A wide receiver trade, it says. Hey, guys, long-time listener, first time emailing. First of all, thank you guys for the continued great coverage of the Steelers and allowing average Joes like myself to understand the game and team they've loved for years. Seth, we're all average Joes. We all just try to have fun and learn this thing and learn every week and talk about it 3 times a week. And move forward, but appreciate the kind words. He says, with the trade for Mike Williams, who is going to lose snap counts? Calvin Austin has been coming into his own, and Jefferson has been doing the dirty work. Would we see less Cordell Patterson lined up as a wide receiver? It's not like we've seen a lot of Cordell Patterson lined up anyway there, right? So if anybody's going to probably lose snaps here, it's probably going to be Van Jefferson.
I agree. They'll still all play. They'll still all rotate, especially early on as Williams gets acclimated to the system and picks things up. But yeah, I think Austin, a little bit more of a slot interior role. He can play outside. He can play everything. But I would say that Jefferson will be the first guy that's going to lose some of those snaps, that bigger body outside type.
Yeah, how many snaps has Jefferson played so far this year? What's he averaging per game? Let's see. Jefferson has
359 for the season.
359 for the season. Divide that by 8.
That's 44.8 per game. Remember, he got poked in the eye and missed a bunch of snaps that one game, so it's probably been closer to call it 50 per game when he's been available.
Yeah, he's definitely going to see a cut there.
Yeah, I would say in that 25 to 30 range, probably an even split to start out and then go from there. If Williams produces, he'll continue to chip away at that snap count.
Seth, thanks for the email. Thanks for being a long-time listener and first-time emailer. Keep emailing back in, brother. Davis Liddell writes in, hey, David Knox, it's been a ton of fun seeing the offense clicking the past couple of weeks, but as I reflect on the past couple of weeks with Russ, I can't help but think about the first 2 weeks with Mason Rudolph as a starter in 2023. Both cases, Mason Rudolph as a starter about the first 2 weeks. Okay, both cases we saw two. Is he got the right year here? He says, I can't help but think about the first 2 weeks with Mason Rudolph as a starter in 2000. Oh, he's talking about once Mason came in, not the first actual 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Both cases, we saw 2 games of more than 250 passing yards and 25 plus points on the board. Is the Steelers' offense success more sustainable than last year's? How can this team prevent from sputtering out like we did with Mason at the end of last year? Look, I mean, just what you're doing on the ground with the personnel usage, with the ability of Russell Wilson to push the football down the field, converting third downs, and burying the football in the end zone when you get in the red zone. I mean, look, this is schematically, we're seeing a lot of good things on tape. We're seeing, even when Justin Fields for a few games in there beginning of the season, we saw this team move the football down the field. We just had not seen them punch it into the end zone enough in the red zone within there. Yeah, you got to just keep doing what you're doing. Have the run success. Alex, you had a good post about how about the play action and the continued success with that, right? Mm-hmm. Keep that up. And just keep doing more of what they're doing. And obviously, the addition of Mike Williams, you hope that results in a couple more big plays down the field, and maybe this loosens things up a little bit for Pat Freiermuth, maybe in the middle of the field some.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I get the point. I mean, the offense had success under Rudolph last year, but I think it has a chance to be more longer term, more sustainable, and just a better quarterback play overall to hopefully go toe to toe for whoever they face in the postseason, be it Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, CJ Stroud, etc. You guys know the names out there. So I think just hopefully more consistency and a little higher level play that is probably more sustainable would be my answer to that. And they just have to get, I mean, how do you avoid what happened last year? Faster start. And that is one box this offense will still have to check and, do a better job of. They've had some quicker starts the last in Wilson's 2 starts in terms of just moving the football, but then finishing drives has still been an issue. But go back to the stat that I'll repeat a ton, mentioned at Monday's show, outscored in the first quarter 66-0 in their last 5 playoff games, all losses. So that'll be the deciding factor, I think, in terms of can Pittsburgh get over the hump and break the streak.
And in the here and now, like we've talked about, we got to start talking about first drive, going down the field and punching it in, right?
Yeah, the offense has moved under Wilson early, but it has to put the ball in the end zone, and that's still an obstacle that has not been overcome yet.
Right, and don't shoot yourself in the foot with the penalties.
Right.
Especially in key moments as well too. There's never a good time for a penalty, but especially when you, as part of a touchdown pass and a face mask on your right tackle there. But all right, Davis Liddell, thank you for the email there. Alex, that's all I have in here. We wanted to try to make this show kind of an hour long to make it listenable and being it's packed full of news, talking about the trades and recapping Tomlin. And once again, this podcast that you're listening to right now will serve as the Wednesday morning podcast. We will be back on Friday morning, previewing the game against the Washington Commanders. We have a beat writer lined up, but I don't want to jinx it. Sometimes those things fall through, but we hope to continue that streak going on and have a beat writer on to give us that side of things with the Washington Commanders. The first injury report of week 10 will be out Wednesday. We'll have all that stuff on SteelersDepot.com. As Alex mentioned, a lot of film rooms coming up as well. Another one on
Preston
the new,
Smith.
Preston Smith is yet to be posted yet. We got one on Mike Williams up. A lot of good things to look forward to. So we hope you stop by the site and look at all the great content there. And we'll see you then on Friday. So until Friday, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex__ Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Upper right navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. Thank you for listening. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.